What's going on, everybody? June is pretty much over. Happy Pride to everyone that celebrates that. And they just picked the end of the month, the halfway point of the year, to just friggin' dump all of the content on us completely. So we have got Dustin is back. We're here to break down a lot of things. We got The Idol. We got new season of Black Mirror, new Wes Anderson. I'm a Virgo. No Hard Feelings. We got a new Marvel show. We got season 2 of The Bear. And then at the end of this, we're going to be breaking down real quickly. We're just going to be recapping for you guys our top 10 favorite movies so far at the halfway point of the year. It's going to be a lot to talk about, but it's going to be a worthwhile conversation. Anyways, so all of that and more on tonight's episode of the Talking TV podcast.
Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Talking TV podcast. This is what we are sitting at roughly just about halfway through 2023, and it has been an interesting year for content, to say the least. I'd like to think that this year, as opposed to last year where it was pretty heavily skewed towards TV and streaming, we've seen a little bit of a bounce back. The movies have sort of started crawling their way back. We finally have a official summer movie season for the first time in 3 years. The quality, unfortunately, still does not seem to be there, I would say, overall. And while we've certainly had less TV shows, the TV shows have still just been kicking ass. But in the wake of Succession and Barry ending a couple weeks ago, we've just had a slew of shows that have hit just in this past month. Some new, some returning. So we're going to kick off the conversation tonight with a show Dustin just finished the most recent episode of. It has kind of been the in-between show for a couple things right now for HBO. That is Sam Levinson and Abel Tesfaye, aka The Weeknd's debut show, The Idol, starring Lily Rose Depp. So Dustin, you just finished episode 4 of this show. I believe this is only supposed to be 5 episodes of miniseries. There's a little bit of controversy, as there always is in Hollywood, which is still hilarious to me.
I just learned that like 2 minutes ago that it was like 5 episodes.
Yeah, which it's because it's
annoying. It was originally supposed to be 6.
Yeah,
because it says it on the Wikipedia that it was originally supposed to be 6.
Yeah, well, more than likely what happened is they were trying to figure out their release schedule for all their other shows that are coming out, and they probably I don't know, they were probably like hoping that like Righteous Gemstones would be the one that like branches the summer, and then you have Winning Time.
I gotta watch that after
the end of the summer. Yeah, there's so much freaking content. It's like how it was last year. But so The Idol obviously gained a lot of controversy based off that first trial, just based off the behind the scenes stories. It was originally being conceived by Amy Seimetz with The Weeknd, and then I believe that she was let go. Her entire creative vision was scrapped when The Weeknd decided to bring on Sam Levinson to direct every episode. And I mean, just his style.
It was always Sam Levinson's show, but she was brought on originally to direct the series. But then The Weeknd pretty much came out in public, or this got out into the public, and he pretty much said that it's starting to take a little bit too much of a female's perspective.
Which
supposedly what he said, even though it's about a pop star,
right? Even though it's about a female pop star, which that's one of the craziest takes that I've ever heard.
I'm like, do you even know what you're making? And just really was the fact that it's just Sam Levinson, and he's just everything he touches is just like controversial. It feels like, because he's a little repetitive for what he does, and all of his shit looks great and everything. I just don't think he's as great of a writer as he thinks he is. But I gotta say, Dominic, this is the best thing he's made.
Yeah, I agree
show
with that.
So far is the best thing he's made. And since we're pretty much almost done with it now, that I just realized it's only 5 episodes. What's the 5th episode going to be? 2 hours?
Probably. They might just
reach an hour and a half.
They do that shit all the time now.
Who knows anymore, right?
Yeah, who knows?
The finale, the finale of The Wire, season 4, was like an hour 20.
Yeah.
So like even they've been doing that for a while.
They've been doing that for a long time. I think that I want to say the first one was The Sopranos.
Oh,
fourth
yeah.
season finale, but even that one's not like a full hour 20. I think that one's only like an hour 15 or something like that. But yeah, no, they've been doing that for a while. I mean, Succession, I mean, Game of Thrones last season, the last 4 episodes were pretty much like movie line. Like The Long Night is a full 82 minutes. I'm like, that's movie line.
Of course, Stranger Things.
Of course, Stranger Things.
The last, like most of those episodes of the last part of the second, or the second part of the last season was just, most of those episodes were like an hour and a half.
They only put out 2 episodes. They only put out 2 episodes for the second half of season 4, and that dropped the first weekend of July last year. And the last episode, everyone the joke was longer than the Thor movie that came out a week later, because the Stranger Things finale was 2.5 hours long. And the Thor and the Thor movie was a straight hour 58. But going back to The Idol, I agree with what you said about Sam Levinson as far as this being the best thing that he's directed. And I think the key to that being in something that you said earlier, which is that he didn't write this. He only directed it. And I think that's the key phrase, because Sam Levinson is an incredible technician. Again, the way that he shoots it.
No, he wrote this. He co-wrote this.
But that's the thing, co-wrote it. This isn't like fully originally his. The difference to me between something like this versus something like Euphoria is that Euphoria is like entirely his baby. Like he had other co-writers on for the first season, but the second season he shot and directed that. He shot, wrote, directed that thing entirely by himself. And I'm pretty sure he did that also.
I hate to pop your bubble, but like, I know he took over the creative hall after Amy Simons, but I'm looking at it right now. Teleplay by Sam Levinson. He has people on the story helping him. The Weeknd and this other guy, Reza Fahim. But other than that, he's writing the shit. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, well, in that case, then I'm really lost, because I don't know. Is he just like grown as a creative then, as far as this being? Because like
a little bit, yeah, because it's a little raw. I think the more he moves away from teenagers, maybe the more successful he is. The more he moves away from Zendaya, to be quite frank, from me.
Yeah,
he needs to let her work with other people.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because I mean, essentially the consensus being that like Sam Levinson, it's almost always like he stumbles upon something like actually interesting in his work, where his work is so stylistically and aesthetically pleasing and interesting that I feel like the biggest problem that I have with Euphoria is that that distracts people, specifically again the Gen Zers, who it is very problematically targeted at, from the fact that that show is actually kind of really like shallow and empty and isn't actually saying anything deep other than just like, yeah, teenagers are fucked up, but it's over glorifying the shit out. Right.
It's like Degrassi. It's like a Degrassi that looks great.
Right. And but on top of that, it's over glorifying the shit out of it, because it makes it look everything in that even though it's portraying like real problems in a real way, it's over glorifying the shit out of it by making it look as cool as possible. And the fact that it has started like so many trends as a result of like how many people are directly like
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if he's glorifying everything in his shows. Take on it? I just think he's just he might be a little too overzealous as a filmmaker. He might be more unintentionally over the top than he realizes with his dialogue and material. But the way he shoots everything is fantastic. You know what I mean? Like, it just
I'm no disputing that.
But like, when it comes to the characters, it's just like, he doesn't know how to write realistic high school. But really, the success of that show is mainly due to the cinematography and the acting.
Yes.
Most of the acting. That makes it like convincing. Well, yeah, because I don't want to kiss everyone's ass on that show, but like, there are some really, underrated, under the radar performances that don't get enough credit, just because Zendaya screams a couple times at her mom and her sister hides in the corner crying. But yeah, like Angus Cloud, what a fucking breakthrough find right there.
Yeah.
Who we'll talk about later with our Tribeca movies.
Yes.
And anyway, also Sydney Sweeney and Alexa Demi, who everything they've been in, they've shown more range to me than Zendaya has personally. And Zendaya, I don't think she has the hardest part on that show, contrary to belief of everybody else. I feel like everyone else seems to have like a harder job to do on that show. Like Jacob Elordi, fantastic. Like, you wouldn't have.
The fact that you had people coming out of that show feeling sorry for a character like Nate Jacobs, who is a psychopath sociopath character.
Yeah.
Like, it is insane to me. It like attributes so much to Elordi's performance. Elordi and Maud Apatow as well. Those are probably like those are easily like the top 5 for me, along with the 3 that you just mentioned, as far as breakout, like really excellent actors from the show. But I think how that kind of ties into The Idol as well. Like, it's almost like, since like now that he's like getting away from Zendaya and away from kind of like the high school aspects of it, and like actually getting into like the dark side of show business, in a weird way, it's like a perfect place to lend his talents, because in a way I can kind of see that like The Weeknd has like a really, really specific vision for the show, but in a way it's almost like The Weeknd's what he wants to focus on are like more problematic, because I feel because the only thing that I can get from The Weeknd's take on this is that he just really wants to have sex with Johnny Depp's daughter, and I feel like it's almost like the Sam Levinson aspects that are like showing like the more traumatic elements of like what it's like to be like specifically a young pop star in this business.
That's what I think this show is kind of full of shit about, just because I don't think this is The Weeknd. I think The Weeknd is in charge of his character and his character alone. I feel like any satire or any substance we get from this show is coming from Sam Levinson. I really do.
Really? Okay.
Just like maybe with some of the music stuff, like, and some of this show definitely involves like her making music, and it's kind of the more generic parts of the show that I could probably attribute to The Weeknd. Because what the fuck does The Weeknd know about writing? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
I don't know. Levinson at least has written some good shit in some of the, in some of Euphoria and some of his movies. Like there's like sprinkles of talent with Sam Levinson. He's just overindulgent. But I definitely think this project is showing his talent the best, because it feels the most authentic to what he's trying to say. It's definitely a little exaggerated in Sam Levinson fashion, but it's not as obnoxious. There's elements to each of these episodes where I'd be like, that's a little over the top, but it's definitely, I'm not rolling my eyes as much as I am during an episode of Euphoria.
Right.
Or like laughing unintentionally like I am in Euphoria. Like, I'm genuinely laughing with this show. Like, I think The Weeknd, contrary to other belief, I might shit on him in any other context, he's pretty good on this show.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He knows how to play like a sketchy, like, he thinks he's so intimidating, but he's kind of a joke. But like, there's definitely some danger that, like, he is a dangerous person, but he's not intimidating. And I don't think the show is really thinking that he is. He's just more of like a leech. He's a leech who thinks he's controlling. And I'm definitely familiar with people like that previously in my life. But like, I think he's doing a good job on this show. I'm not displeased with this performance. And to be fair, I went in with very low expectations. That clip that they released about him shitting on Rolling Stone, and of course his little role as himself in Uncut Gems, and he was on an episode of American Dad. It's just like, he has the most robotic voice in the world. But in this show, that voice is like, he's not doing his regular speaking voice, so it's like he's definitely playing a character, but it feels a little bit more transformative than, of course, Uncut Gems or any of his other work as an actor. But I don't know. I'm having a good time with it. It's definitely probably the campiest part of the show, but I think or at least Sam Levinson at the very least knows how to direct that performance.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the few instances of like a really good meeting of two artistic talents that are both very skilled in what they do individually and actually complement each other pretty well in order to create something that I don't know if this is going to make my list of favorite shows of the year, but it's definitely one that I'm glad I'm worth watching. It's definitely one that I can tell that, like, oh, this is one of the few instances of, like, we were talking about earlier this week on our Steve Carell podcast, another instance of like critics just immediately wanted to shit can something before it even comes out, and so far it seems to be beating it, because I mean, I don't. The sad thing is I don't know how many people personally are watching this, but like, I'm hoping that people will discover this. I think it's a good find for sure.
It's so getting pretty good ratings, and we have to wait until the finale next week. I can't believe I'm saying that. I didn't even think there was going to be a finale next week. I thought it was 2 weeks from now. I'll move on, but just the fact that we're like going to get the finale next week is that it just depends on how that episode ends. Is it going to be like a definitive end, or could there be a second season? We don't know. Big Little Lies.
It's the thing that pisses me off the most about HBO is the fact that because of the state of television right now and the state of people's viewing habits is the fact that now whenever we get a brand new show from them, and I feel like this is exclusive to HBO, but also like it's a result of streaming as well, where it's like we never even know if we're gonna get another season or not. It's like the green light something. It's like, and ever since Watchmen, it's like, could it be a miniseries? Could it get a second season? We don't know. Guess we'll find out. And
I like that Lindelof from the jump was pretty much like, no, this is a miniseries. I'm pretty sure this is like a miniseries because he definitely by the end,
by the end for sure.
He was like, I don't want to.
He was toying around a little bit at the beginning to like spark up some interest, but once we got like to about like episode 7, he was like, yeah, this is all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
I'm definitely enjoying this show though. I like that he did something I liked, and it didn't disappoint me. I thought it was going to be the laughing stock of the summer.
Yeah, I agree, and it is so far completely turned around. All right, moving on. Our next thing, Black Mirror season 6. This is something that I was not expecting to come back ever after Charlie Brooker admitted that like he was stepping away, that we didn't need another season of Black Mirror during COVID. And I have to say, after largely being disappointed with season 5, which was with the 3 episodes that dropped back in summer of 2019, that being Striking Viper, Smithereens, and Rachel, Jack, and Ashley 2, I understood where Charlie Brooker was trying to move the show as far as, okay, he didn't, because real life had done a pretty good job of catching up to Black Mirror. He did not want the show to continue to be an allegory. He wanted to more so focus on the effects that it was how the technology was changing people and society. And I think that while season 5 was a litmus test as far as how that goes, and I think largely it was kind of a failure. I didn't really like a whole lot of those episodes. In fact, I thought one episode was just a straight up failure. I have to say that this season overall has largely been, I think, much better at trying to get at what it is that Charlie Brooker is trying to achieve now with the show, where we have 5 brand new episodes, 2 of which try to dabble a little bit in the supernatural, which I'm a little bit confused at because Black Mirror has always been very straight-laced in sci-fi. And as far as crossing over into supernatural, there's this thing in media for the longest time where science fiction and supernatural, whenever they cross over, it doesn't exactly mesh at that well. And so that is why the latter 2 episodes, Maisie Day and Demon 79, are slightly confusing to me, because Maisie Day starts as an attempt at a statement on early 2000s like paparazzi critique, and then ends as a werewolf episode. It's actually really confusing and kind of comes out of nowhere. But
that's the one with Zazie Beetz.
That's the one with Zazie Beetz, ironically enough, you know, and as if that episode already didn't have little enough going for it as it is.
That's a skip.
But
Did you hear she wants to play Catwoman?
Of course she does.
I know, right? That's what I said.
Of course she fucking does. As if she wasn't already trying to be as if she already wasn't like doing enough insult to like try to be like a less talented Halle Berry. Now she wants to do Halle Berry's worst, like most laughing stock role. Like, come on, Zazie.
Be sarcastic the whole time and be a badass.
Of course,
you know what I mean.
Of course, because that's what she does. The irony being that, like, I know you're not a fan of her in Deadpool 2, but I feel like the irony being that like Deadpool 2 was like one of the few instances where she wasn't trying to be sarcastic and somehow it was worse. Okay, there were like a couple
sarcastic that whole movie.
I take it back. Anyways, but I will say, back to Black Mirror, the first 3 episodes, Joan is Awful, Lock Henry, and Beyond the Sea, I thought were really, really good and really interesting. Joan is Awful is a really fun take on streaming and the streaming algorithm and kind of what it is that we like to watch, where the whole thing essentially is where this office worker played by Annie Murphy discovers a show on their streaming service called Streamberry that is like mimicking her life, like beat for beat, but it's played by Salma Hayek, the version of her that's in the streaming service, and then discovers that that when she signed up for Streamberry, she signed a contract that will use her likeness in order to essentially like generate versions of her life. And then this is apparently going for everybody that signed on to Streamberry. But Salma Hayek gets involved as well, because she realizes that the Streamberry is also using an unlicensed artificial deepfake of her. Like, she's not even starring in the show. She just lended her. And like, what's crazy about this episode is it's like, with the advances in AI,
yeah, that's just in the news.
You can almost like see that happening. The only weakness that this episode had going for it is that the twist ending, they try to do the whole like rabbit hole Inception, like thing within a thing kind of a story ending, and it gets really confusing where they have to break into the Streamberry quarters and destroy the supercomputer that's navigating. It kind of ends dumb, but I will say that like as far as actually like trying to make some sort of a statement on like kind of our obsession with media, I thought it was pretty entertaining. And then
moving forward, about cancel culture, that one,
not really, not as much as you would think.
Okay.
Yeah, and then episode 2, Lock Henry, is surprisingly technology free. That one is about, it's Myella Herald from Industry is dating this Scottish guy, and they go to the Scottish countryside to make a documentary, only to then discover this horrific story of this awful, grisly set of murders that happened there that they then start making a true crime documentary for. They attempt to like sell it out, and then there's some secrets about that time that are revealed. That one is surprisingly technology free, but the cool thing about that one is it's more of like a statement on true crime, and it's just like a really interesting and engaging mystery that actually has like a really fucked up twist ending. I won't spoil it here because it's so good that like this, if I had to pick a favorite episode, it would probably be this one, Lock Henry, episode 2, mostly because it's the most technology devoid. It's very antiquated. It's very much about like, just a couple of college kids like trying to, it's making statements on like glamorization of real world tragedies for purposes of watching. So that one I would probably have to say is the apex. And then Beyond the Sea, episode 3, which is a full-length movie episode. It's about an hour 20 with Aaron Paul and Josh Hartnett. That one is the one that was definitely the most interesting and engaging from a character standpoint. But I feel, and the technology itself, as far as how they utilize it, was interesting. But I feel like that one, it's interesting because I feel like it either needed to be, I feel like in a way it needed to be a little bit longer, because the way that story is set up, you essentially have this setup where Josh Hartnett and Aaron Paul are astronauts, but there's this technology that allows them to beam their conscious down to robot replicas on Earth. So they're able to, still live their lives on Earth separate from the ship. But it's known on Earth, it's in an alternate version of 1969, but it's known on Earth that, that they are robot replicas, and it's not actually them. And what happens is there's this grisly tragedy that happens, which Josh Hartnett's family on Earth is killed by a series of oh my god, what's it called? The Manson stand-ins, led by Rory Culkin, who's kind of the Manson stand-in. And so basically, as a result, Aaron Paul starts letting Josh Hartnett's astronaut use his body as a as a conduit to, to experience life on Earth so that he doesn't go insane in space. And of course, this leads to Hartnett starts hitting on Aaron Paul's wife, played by Kate Mara. And that's kind of where it gets a little bit predictable, because Kate Mara, I don't think gets enough characterization. And Josh Hartnett kind of does a really quick flip of a switch where it's like, he's a pretty, he's like Captain America basically in the beginning. But then once he loses his family, he kind of goes down a dark path pretty quickly. And like, you understand where it goes, but it almost happens a little bit too quickly, where you almost want a little bit more development. And then it ends with this another awful, like, shocker ending that is just like kind of completely out of nowhere. And then as for the last episode, Demon 79, this is the one that like, it's not as bad as Maisie Day, which is the Zazie Beetz werewolf episode, but it's also like not quite good, because it's like this girl essentially summons a genie who's like an evil genie, and then like starts like causing her to like commit murders for him. And it's something, and it ends with like nuclear apocalypse codes. It's really confusing. It's supposed to be making a statement on like how evil is evil if you're murdering people who deserve to be murdered. So like I said, the last 2 episodes kind of lose me, but the first 3, pretty solid as far as a good Black Mirror season. In terms of where I would rank this overall in Black Mirror seasons, the first 2 are still pretty impeccable. I like season 3 a lot. Season 4, not a fan. Seasons 4 and 5, not a fan of. Big fan of the interactive movie Bandersnatch. And so I would probably nestle this right in between seasons 3 and 4. As far as Black Mirror overall. I don't know, Dustin, I know that you and I have talked personally on Black Mirror, but like, just for the viewing audience out there, what is your thought on Black Mirror in general as a show, as a concept?
I like it. I admire it. I respect it. It's not always my thing.
That's fair, especially because like because obviously it is what's it called? It is what's the word I'm looking for that I can never fucking remember? The one where it's like, because every episode is a different story set within a different universe, it can kind of cause the overall quality of the show to vary depending on the strength of each individual episode. And I will say that the dip in quality did unfortunately happen when Netflix acquired it. Netflix still put forward some good and interesting episodes, but I think the increase in episode count allowed for them to maybe not put as much effort and quality into each episode as they did with those first 2 seasons, which were nice, tight, lean, Channel 4 British. Only 3 episodes each. Even the weaker episodes for me of those first 2 seasons still had an era of authenticity that were put into them that I just feel like are not quite there for the Netflix episodes. So that's really my take. I enjoyed it. Even when it's largely disappointing, like seasons 4 and 5 were, I never regret watching a season of Black Mirror, because I feel like I know I'm always going to get something interesting. And like, because Charlie Brooker's got a very unique and interesting take on technology and its effects on us and how we've evolved, and especially since how much reality itself has evolved to reflect the show. Like literally to the point where I'm like, I remember watching stuff on Black Mirror like almost 10 years ago when it first aired, and now seeing where we've come as far as like, like we have sex dolls now and self-driving cars, and artificial intelligence is literally a thing. And obviously the way that reality TV and our viewing habits, like almost everything that's happened in the show has predicted. And I'm still interested to see if they do more episodes and to see where it goes in terms of evolving to match our technology habits, because it only ever goes forward. So the next one I'm only going to talk about for a little bit, because I got to say, the first episode only came out, and it's been a little bit, Marvel's definitely pacing themselves for sure, ever since kind of the debacle of last year when they were losing all that money. And so this is the first Marvel thing we've gotten since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Secret Invasion. This was posed as this is the first TV show in the Marvel Cinematic Universe since last year's She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, which was largely a disappointment, as myself and you and a lot of other people have made clear. This was supposed to be, quote unquote, a return to the MCU of old. This is more of a grounded, Earth-based mystery. We don't have any cosmic elements. We got Nick Fury back as he's investigated the very popular comic based off the very popular Marvel comic line Secret Invasion, in which the Skrulls start beaming down to Earth and infiltrating the human population in order to take it over. There's a slight caveat in the show, because since this is technically the first direct follow-up to Captain Marvel, the fact that the Skrulls are the good guys, technically, only now they've retrofitted it in order to fit into the current narrative of the MCU, where, there's another sect of Skrulls that are mad because Nick Fury and Captain Marvel couldn't find them a home, so now they're going to infiltrate and take over the Earth. And I gotta say, after watching another episode, yeah, these Marvel TV shows gotta go. I'm sorry. For the most part, their hit ratio has been incredibly low. Even the good ones have been unbelievably mediocre. Like Loki and Moon Knight, as entertaining as those were, are still relatively mediocre. I think the only
Hawkeye for the most part.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And the problem there is that because Hawkeye is largely not taking itself as seriously as those other shows, it's like the problem with Marvel in general, I feel like, is that they have really, really lost their ability to kind of mesh and blend between tones, between the funny parts and the more dramatic storytelling. And now it's like they can't really figure out if their stories are supposed to be important, if they're supposed to build towards anything. And this is just the latest example where I'm one episode in and I'm like, the biggest takeaway for me was, it's like, oh no, they killed Maria Hill. And like, that's the only takeaway. I'm like, I don't really care about the fact that Fury's been up on a satellite for however many years it's been. I don't care about this new sect of Skrulls. There's nothing that's really getting me invested in, despite the fact that this is another thing based off of a massively popular Marvel comic. Like Secret Invasion is up there with like one of like the top 5 biggest Marvel comic book lines, along lines like Age of Ultron, like Civil War, like House of M, like one of these other majorly popular runs. And the fact that, again, this is the best thing. And of course you have the showrunners that are coming out and being like, oh, Marvel instructed us not to read any comics that this was based off of, because it's like, okay, because God forbid we actually adapt this from the source material. But I don't know, Dustin, what's been your stance on the MCU recently in general? Like, what are your thoughts on like where we are now with Secret Invasion?
It's all over the place. I didn't even finish. I didn't even bother finish this episode. What happened at the last in the last 10 minutes of this episode? I didn't even...
Maria Hill dies. That's literally it.
Fucking really? That's when something happened? Jesus Christ. Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm like, oh no. I'm like, I may have accidentally spoiled it for you. Yeah, no, they're trying to infiltrate the thing where the Skrulls are placing the bombs, and then the lead Skrull, the Kingsley Ben-Adir Skrull, literally shapeshifts into Nick Fury and then shoots Hill and kills her.
Cobie Smulders got killed off?
Yep.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
What shall she ever do?
Oh, I think she'll be just fine.
Really?
I think she'll be just fine. But
hopefully she gets Catwoman instead of Zazie Beetz. I'm kidding. Yeah.
No, Marvel's been a mess recently. It's no.
Marvel has been less than marvelous as of late.
Yeah, it really has. Like, there's really been nothing invigorating. Like, it's bad because every time you get like a good movie, there's always a caveat. Like No Way Home, it's the Spider-Man nostalgia. Wakanda Forever, it's because they lost Chadwick and they wanted to do him right.
Guardians 3, movie, though.
No, it is for sure. But like, would it have been as good if Chadwick was still alive? I mean, I'd like to think so.
Probably.
I'd like to think so. But
probably.
And then Guardians 3, because of that's Gunn's swan song to the MCU and with his time in the characters, and kind of like his FU to Marvel by like basically saying that, yeah, I can make a better, you guys tried to shit can me, and now I'm gonna make the best movie and leave you guys with nothing. And I gotta say, now that those 3 movies are over with, I mean, my confidence in them, which has already been shaken a lot, is just going down and down and down. We're almost 3 years into their post-COVID run, and I gotta say, I have not been impressed with a lot of their titles. I'm really not that impressed with
You
this.
can't wait for the Marvels, bro. The
Oh,
Marvels
I'm
is gonna be
so
your
excited for the
favorite
Marvels.
movie of the year.
I'm
Dude.
so excited for the Marvels when they took, and I think the most insulting thing about that trailer was that they took probably the best sequence from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, the hallway fight scene set to the Beastie Boys song, and then just straight ripped another Beastie Boys song for the trailer. And it's 1,000 times shittier. Like I'm not a fan of
They'll
where
play
they're
another.
going.
They'll play another No Doubt song in the climax of this movie.
Probably.
Yeah.
Like it'll be another
Sorry,
like
I'm not home right now. I'm walking in a spider web. So you're just gonna hear that in the third act of it. Yo, absolutely.
Yeah, it's gonna be terrible. So yeah, Secret Invasion. We gave our 5 seconds on it. Cool. I'm done. We'll move on now.
Ben
We're
Mendelsohn.
yeah, which I'm like, they can't even do Ben Mendelsohn right in the show. It's so tragic.
First of all, why is he allowed to be Australian on that show?
Right? Like
no one else is
he has
Australian.
To do an American, he has to do, but also it's the fact that he has to do an American accent for literally every single thing that he's been in since like his major breakout in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
And I've literally only heard him do an Australian accent in one other thing besides this, which is Killing Them Softly.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. Everything else he's done an American accent in. So it's like, yeah, this is the one. It's like he's doing Australian. Yeah. I like put it. I already forgot.
Unless it's like a British or Australian movie, then he'll have his accent.
Well, yeah, but yeah, I don't know. Anyways, we did our 5 seconds, our obligatory 5 seconds for Marvel. So now let's take a quick break from the TV and go into the 2 movies that were released this weekend, because we did get 2 movies this weekend. So Asteroid City, the 11th Wes Anderson feature film. Dustin, what are your thoughts on this? And Wes Anderson as a filmmaker.
I love Wes Anderson. He's one of the first directors I really attached myself to as a teenager. One of the first directors I binged all of his movies, and I love all of his movies. Then Isle of Dogs came out, and I do like that movie, but that was the first one where I was just like, yeah, I'm not I don't love this movie. But I'll give him, he hasn't made a bad movie yet. French Dispatch was like fucked over because of COVID. And to me, that is his weakest movie.
Yeah.
Still his weakest movie. Still not a bad movie. Definitely, it might arguably be his most his most beautiful looking movie, rather. But I just don't think the story, all 3 of those like anthologies came together as cleanly as they should have. And I don't know, I just thought it was a little bit more cynical than his other movies. And Asteroid City, he keeps piling on those casts, Dominic. Yep. Oh my God. Yep. It's like half of Hollywood in this
movie. So funny because I was literally making this joke where I'm like, I almost dread every time a Wes Anderson movie comes out now, because it's like I'm like, just the amount of actors in my letterbox that I have to update every single time a Wes Anderson movie comes out. And it's, aside from like a handful, it's never like a substantial part. It's always just like a microscopic cameo, and they're all just reciting Wes Anderson.
For the most part, there's a few in this movie where it's just like, it's cool to see Tom Hanks have a role in a Wes Anderson movie, and it's actually
Steve
pretty
Carell,
even
the subject of our most recent Actors Hall of Fame. Which again, I think of all the actors in this movie, Steve Carell was the only one not quite giving a Wes Anderson performance. Which I'll get into that when
a natural performance,
right? Exactly,
like he always does.
Which I'll get into that when I get into my thoughts on Wes Anderson.
I'm glad, and you were telling me this, right? That Bill Murray was supposed to play that role, right?
I believe so, yes, because this is the first Wes movie since Bottle Rocket that Murray has not been in.
Yeah, and it's weird to me that was the role he was supposed to play, because Carell is so like perfect for that. To me, it was so obviously the Tom Hanks role that he was supposed to play, right?
Right, which is ironic also.
They're like around the same age, right?
Right. Yeah, just about. Like Murray and I think Murray might be a little bit older, but they're right around the same age. Yeah.
But like they might have modified it to like 65 for Tom Hanks. Like, which is like crazy that he's like, he's probably 65, Tom Hanks.
He's 66,
Yeah, so they definitely modified it probably to him. But I see Bill Murray more in that role. Otherwise, the cast is uniformly really good as per usual.
Right.
I thought Scarlett was a little overhyped. I thought she was underused in this movie. I would have liked to see a little bit of more her and her body, if you know what I mean.
Yes, sir.
But we'll talk more about body shots.
Yeah,
in the
no,
next
this
movie,
is sir. This
which
certainly
has
has
a
been.
better body shot.
Yes, sir. I was
Uh,
about to say, like, this has been the weekend of seeing attractive actresses just flaunting it
like
out for everyone to
dream ones
see.
too, like the
Yes,
top tier
sir.
ones, like
Yes,
her and
sir.
J Law,
Oh, yes.
ScarJo and J Law, dude.
Yes.
But Black Widow and Mystique.
Oh man, I love that. That's still like the big budget role, Jennifer, that we attribute Jennifer
Well,
Lawrence
that's
to,
a
not Katniss
superhero
Everdeen.
role, yeah.
It's
Well,
true. It's true. It's
oh
true.
yeah, I forgot about Cat. Well, at least I saw all the X-Men movies. That's the
That's
thing.
true. I've still only seen the first Hunger Games. I'm gonna go back and watch all the Hunger Games movies at some point.
Should we though? Should we do that?
I don't know. I'm a completionist, you know, and I heard that the movies do get somewhat better, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, my thoughts on.
Did you watch all of the Divergent movies?
Well, I have never seen a single Divergent movie, so I'm like, why would I start something that looks unbelievably atrocious?
That seems like a Dominic movie.
Nah. See, no, that was one
fine.
that was one that even in high school I knew was going to be shitty. But
this movie was fine, Dominic. It's like definitely his second weakest movie behind French Dispatch. Just because
so you have French Dispatch below this.
For sure, because I think this had like a little bit more creativity behind it. I like the meta-ness of it. I just don't think he's as I don't think he pulls it off as well as he should, you know, as a filmmaker of his stature should. And I know we were ragging on him about getting like such huge cast for little tiny roles and everything. And Matt Dillon's another one who has like a little bit
Matt
part.
Dillon also.
I wish he had a little bit more to do because he's proven himself as to be an amazing.
Doesn't Hong Chow pop in this?
That's what I mean. Like Hong Chow. I didn't even realize that was Hong Chow.
Come in out of nowhere.
Yeah,
like Margot Robbie's there for a photo. And then she comes in at the end. I'm like, what is happening?
Or it's like pulling one of the biggest actresses of our generation. She's just in one pivotal scene, but still, and she plays an important character. But like, it's just a small piece of the puzzle. But that shows to you how much actors want to work with Wes Anderson because of how great and distinct his films are.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely not going to be one I want to rewatch like over and over again. I will give this a second chance. I'm more eager to give this a second chance than I am French Dispatch, just because of how displeased I was by the second story in the French Dispatch involving Timothée Chalamet and Frances McDormand fucking for some reason. But yes, 7.5 for Asteroid City. I if this was 2014, this would be like a 9.5 for me. But like this is only a 7.5. It's a better. I saw people comparing this to Nope. And I'm just like, yeah, if Wes Anderson made I kind of see that. Like just because of the whole alien thing and like I've heard some
and tonally and
it's a different movie aesthetically, but there's parts you can compare though.
Sure, but
yeah. Not saying like shot for shot.
No, I don't know. Like to me, that's a little bit of a reach. Yeah. So my take on Wes Anderson. So I've been slowly catching up on my Wes Anderson movies over the years. I still have 3 left to watch. I still have yet to watch Bottle Rocket. I got to finish Life Aquatic, and I still have to see Darjeeling Limited. But I've caught up on all the big ones. I actually watched Rushmore the day before I saw Asteroid City. And my take on Wes Anderson is that there's pre-2014 Wes Anderson and there's post-2014 Wes Anderson. Very similar to you, because the first Wes Anderson movie that I saw was The Grand Budapest Hotel. And I love that movie. That movie is just such a delight. I think it's a great balancing act between everything that makes him great, where he is able to create these massive, beautiful, gorgeous, aesthetically pleasing, perfectly symmetrical canvases that toe the line so well between humanity and surrealist art and surrealist cartoony art pieces, you know, where like the sequences that happen in his movies are straight up Looney Tunesy, like where you have like people going on chase sequences and committing random acts of violence against each other, you know. And as I was watching each of his movies, you know, throughout it, I believe I watched Moonrise Kingdom next, then I watched Isle of Dogs, then Royal Tenenbaums, then Fantastic Mr. Fox I just watched recently, and the most recent one that I watched was Rushmore. I started watching Life Aquatic, and I fell asleep during it. And the thing that I noticed is that as his films have gone on, they've gotten less and less human. But I think that the difference is that with the reason why that 09 to 14 is like his sweet spot. I remember because Darjeeling Limited, if memory serves, was not that well critically received. But then he had the massive bounce back when he transferred fully to stop motion with Fantastic Mr. Fox, because it's just like he just felt like the perfect person to be able to adapt Roald Dahl's source material perfectly. And I think the thing that really works with Moonrise Kingdom and Grand Budapest is that those are the two perfect merging points of his two sensibilities. Of you feel the humanity in those characters, but the cartoonishness, specifically more so with Grand Budapest, is just off the charts and is another level and is really funny. And I feel like with everything that he's done after Grand Budapest, it's just there's just been something missing. Isle of Dogs, I think, had some really great humane moments with the dogs, but all the human characters, it's like, what is the purpose of them? They're just like stock characters.
And
also
on top of it, there's no subtitles in that movie,
right? Which okay,
is a problem.
And then French Dispatch, I liked. I'm gonna go a little bit of the opposite. I like that movie a little bit more than Asteroid City for the pure fact that I just thought it was funnier and I was just able to enjoy it. And like that movie is just, I even said, I'm like, this movie is straight up a live action cartoon. I'm like, and that's fine. I like cartoons. Like I like cartoony sensibilities, and the fact that he's able to keep that consistently going throughout the movie, even like it wasn't taking itself seriously. This movie, I found it a little bit harder to emotionally connect to this movie. Like, really, I thought that it was too stale. I thought it was too stagnant. I thought it was too much like, oh, we're just, every character is looking straight into the camera and talking exactly like this, even though we were supposed to be extremely emotional. Like, I can't connect to that, you know, like that. Like, if there's no humor to be found, if they're not like playing it up for the joke, I really could not emotionally connect to this, especially with this directly following up Rushmore, which for me personally, I think, even though Grand Budapest, I think, is his best movie, for me, I think Rushmore might be my favorite of his, because there was just like a
relatable.
It was just so relatable. There was just a pure, unadulterated humanity in that movie, like between Schwartzman and Bill Murray's characters, that I just thought, and like the humor in that movie was just so pitch perfect with how dry it was, but yet how ridiculous the actual antics were. Like when the kids start throwing rocks at him, and then when he fucking puts on the fake blood to try and get with the team, like that, hilarious. I'm like, yes, that is my peak Wes. And this Wes, I gotta say, I mean, he's doing another Roald Dahl movie later this year, but it's a short movie.
Yeah,
I gotta
say, like, I hated hearing that. To comment what you were saying, where it's like it's hard to attach your to these characters in this movie specifically because it's basically a play,
right?
You know what I mean? And like
that,
like,
I don't understand the purpose of the play. Like, I get that it's supposed to be like a meta statement on
like
art,
a fable,
like, right?
Yeah. And I like that they turned the play, like us, the audience, we see it in a cinematic landscape, and that's cool and creative, even though it's essentially a play. You know what I mean? But I don't understand what the point of the play fully was. Maybe that'll sink in for me on a rewatch. But I like that this was a little bit more thought-provoking than the French Dispatch. I thought the French Dispatch was kind of discombobulated in what all those three anthologies meant to the French Dispatch paper itself. But I don't know. I liked the ensemble more here. I would have liked it to be a little bit longer. If this was like 10-15 minutes longer, I think this would have been really a great film. But for what we got, it's another solid Wes Anderson movie, but he's capable of greatness, like absolute perfection, like Fantastic Mr. Fox and The Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Wes Anderson to me is the definition of a consistent filmmaker, where again, he's never missed, he's never made a bad movie. And his style is just so succinct and locked in place that, like, he'll be able to make movies like this for the rest of his time. And
he's just starting to make disappointing movies.
Right, exactly. But just like
a little below his average.
Exactly. And I would never go so far as to state that his movies are bad. Like, I would never say that about an Anderson movie. Like I said, I still have the last 3 to watch before I will have completed his filmography, which I plan to do.
You gotta watch
Zissou. Yeah, I gotta watch Zissou. I've heard that one's really good. So far, my absolute favorites are Budapest, Rushmore, and Moonrise Kingdom. Not gonna lie, Fantastic Mr. Fox, it was good. I liked it. I think I liked Isle of Dogs a little bit more. Sorry, but I'm serious. I think I like Isle of Dogs a little bit more.
Fantastic Mr. Fox is arguably his masterpiece. It's like a culmination of his pacing, his editing, his comedic style, and his wonder combined with Roald Dahl's creativity and imaginativeness. And everyone in that cast is firing on all cylinders. George Clooney, Meryl Streep, Jason Schwartzman. It's just perfect. Wally Wolodarski.
I guess the reason why is because it's such a pitch perfect adaptation of that novel that, like, it is so weird for me to say, because again, the movie is a masterpiece. It is structurally perfect on every level. It's kind of a thing where it's like, because it is, there's nothing really wrong with
tightly paced too. Like the
very
pacing is so tight, and like Isle of Dogs kind of drags, and like you don't understand what anybody's saying in that movie for the most part. At least there's great dialogue most of the time in Fantastic Mr. Fox, but I digress. But okay.
All right, going on to the other big drop that we had this week movie wise. No Hard Feelings. This movie is strangely enough, again, only in 2023 could a movie like this be such a big deal, because in any pre-COVID year, even 2019, which is when these types of movies were starting to go out of theaters, where you have a raunchy, I use that term very loosely, comedy that is mostly a coming of age / rom-com that has a big splashy movie star and it's getting released in theaters. I feel like, again, the fact that we pretty much, these types of movies stopped getting made for theaters and were made kind of exclusively for streaming, but they just like, was an excuse for the streamers to kind of cheap out on them. I don't know. I do think that the most interesting thing about this movie is the fact that it was getting such a pretty hard marketing campaign. I think this is the first comedy that I think I remember since Game Night, really, that's gotten like a pretty extensive marketing campaign. And even though the movie itself, I just watched it, I finished watching it a couple hours ago. Even though the movie itself is just okay, it's not a great movie. The fact that like it's enjoyable and it's sweet and it's harmless, and even though if certain subject matter that I think is trying to be more relevant than it is, but also like again, it is touching on certain topics like differences between millennials and Gen Zers and overprotective parents, and the idea of like what the idea of growing up in a completely surrounded like bubble is nowadays. I don't know. Like I enjoyed this one, honestly. I really did.
You did. You enjoyed it.
Yes.
Here's the thing. This movie's fine. That's really it. It's
right,
fine.
It's harmless.
It's fine. It's not. I wouldn't call this good either, though. I laughed a couple of times. You understand? Right. I chuckled mostly because of the charm of Jennifer Lawrence, and she really carries the hell out of this fucking movie. Let me tell you, like she is fucking great in this movie.
This movie solidifies that Lawrence is a movie star.
Because absolutely, because it has a thin fucking script. It has 1,000 ideas it wants to throw at you, and it has no idea how to tackle them. It doesn't want. It's too soft to be edgy, and it's too like it's just it doesn't have a set of balls. I'm sorry for being graphic. It has a set of tits and a vagina.
Indeed.
Let me tell you that.
Oh, indeed.
And that was great to see. On the big screen.
It does.
I saw this on the big screen, and that was fucking worth it.
Oh, even on the small screen, I was like, "This is."
If we're gonna get more hot naked girls
flashback to 2013
R-rated comedies, I'm fine with that.
Flashback to 2013, 2014, indeed. But
that was great to see. Jennifer Lawrence is like one of my crushes forever. So
also the fact that she pretty much hasn't aged like at all.
Oh no,
like over the course of 10 years. Also the fact that she's had a kid too, and that's what she looks like, which is wild when you think about that. Like, but other than that, no, I agree. I tend to agree with. Like I said, I don't want to seem like I'm giving this movie more credit than it deserves. But
it's
again,
not that funny, and it doesn't really push the boundaries like the marketing suggests. Like, if we want these movies, good. I hope it makes money, but like make them edgier. You know what I mean? Make them funnier. Make them like The Hangover. Make them like Superbad. Make them like Wedding Crashers. Give us edgy, funny, consistently funny shit.
And that's ultimately the problem, is it falls victim to its marketing, where the marketing makes this movie seem like it's going to be a lot raunchier and funnier than it is. And it is a good movie. It is heartfelt. You get emotionally attached to these characters. At least I did. You get emotionally attached to these characters. You understand like kind of the struggles of both of them individually. And I actually think the ending resolution is actually kind of good. But it almost plays itself out more like something like more similar to like something like The Fault in Our Stars. And
that's what I mean. It has a tonally out of. Yeah, sorry.
Right, rather than like something like you said, like a Wedding Crashers, like a Hangover, like it's completely mismarketed to me. But it's also I think goes into the problem that comedies were having before COVID, is because the reason why not a lot of people are going to see them is because they were marketed completely wrong. Because even Game Night, which we both love, that movie's marketing does not mesh at all with the type of movie that it is. Same as it is Tag. Tag is a lot darker than it was marketed. It's just, I don't know what it is with these studios, but they market these. It's like they market every one of these movies like Pineapple Express, but not every single one of these movies is Pineapple Express. So it's like it's a problem with the marketing and the fact that they need to actually figure out what a quote unquote raunchy comedy is.
These trailers wish they had the trailer of Pineapple Express.
Yeah.
Okay, but this movie just has a completely like Fairly Brothers-esque beginning and like opening 15 minutes where it just starts and it's all goofy and giddy and everything, but like in a copycat way, not in an actual like Fairly Brothers in peak 90s form. And then it has the ending of some like coming of age Fault in Our Stars movie, like you're saying.
Right.
And it's just completely disconnected. There's no real comeuppance with the Matthew Broderick or Laurie Bonatti characters.
Right. And it seems like the movie's going to take those two characters to task a little bit for
which they should.
Which they absolutely should.
And like it's the movie never knows what to do with that premise of like, oh, shouldn't they? They should have let them fuck. Honestly, like if you want to make an edgy comedy,
why they didn't
have the parents like react off of that. Do something. This was like kind of boring after a while, and it was just trying to make us feel bad for a flawed character, which is fine, and she does a great job at that. It just feels like a more lighthearted version of Bad Teacher, which this falls under the same category. I mean, that movie was more irritating at its worst, but it still has the same amount of laugh factor that this did. You know, it just doesn't stay with you.
I agree. Definitely felt like a first draft that definitely needed to be looked over. There's pieces of some good stuff in here, but largely overall, like you said, in any other year, this would be considered a terrible movie. But considering just how little of these types of comedies that we get, it feels like just a breath of fresh air as opposed to like a lot of the franchise stuff that we are kind of slammed in the face with.
The only thing that was a breath of fresh air in this movie was Jennifer Lawrence going full nude for a gag. That was a fresh air, and that's when I genuinely laughed hard, and it wasn't like a gimmick. Like it was actually well earned, that scene, and like surprising, and her reaction to everything. And then she had like one of the funniest lines after that. She's like, "Come on, fuck me already!" Like that made me laugh my ass off. But you know, I had to wait 35 minutes to get the first huge laugh of the movie. That's a problem.
That is a problem.
Other movies that we're talking about, like Tropic Thunder, Pineapple Express, Superbad, you name it, the peak comedies that we grew up with, Dominic. Like those movies have you laughing from start to finish.
True. It's true.
This movie, you're going to forget most of it by the end of 2 months.
It's
true. What I mean?
2 months. You're going to forget most of it by the end of the week.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not going to be saying this is one of the best comedies of this year. And if we are, we're living in one of the worst years in film.
Well, I mean, but we've already been saying that. But yeah, it speaks to a larger problem with comedy in general. And like, to me, the reason why the genre was dying off, besides the fact that they were marketing them horribly, besides the fact that the comedies we were getting were very, very few and far between, because we just listed Game Night and Tag, and we both really like Long Shot. But even Long Shot to me was not really like, I like Long Shot. I like it a lot, but that's not like a laugh a laugh a second comedy, you know.
No, but at least it's like more balanced, like an actual movie should, and it builds to the laughs. Like that movie, when it builds to funny moments, it's hilarious, like quite consistently. Like it doesn't need to be a laugh a minute comedy. Like it's a little more differently paced than some of these other movies that we're saying, but it's still in the same ballpark. This is not anywhere near
not
that.
Even close. Not even close. Yeah, and it's interesting because this is not the only raunchy comedy that we're getting this year. We're also getting Joyride in a couple weeks as well, so we'll have to touch base on that one and see how that goes.
This director did Good Boys as his directorial debut, which was a much funnier and much more consistently feel good and like brief and more tightly paced 90-minute fucking movie. This movie needed to be funnier. I'm sorry. You can't just do your multi-million-dollar, $40 million comedy on Jennifer Lawrence's shoulders. I mean, she's funny. She is really funny, but she's not funny enough to build a movie off this thin premise. 2.5 out of 5.
I agree. For me, I'd probably give it like a 3 out of 5, just about. All right, so moving on. We have 2 more things to hit before we do our top 10s of halfway point of the year. First off, another show that dropped literally the day after this other show that we're going to drop, which is the follow-up effort from a director that we both saw his directorial debut in 2018. Sorry to Bother You. Interesting movie, interesting premise. Again, felt like it was just packing in a little bit too many ideas to be really consistent as a movie. But I got to say, just based on the first 2 episodes that we saw for his new show, I'm a Virgo, which dropped all 7 episodes on Amazon Prime on Friday, which follows Jarrell Jerome's character, Cootie, who is a 13-foot tall, 19-year-old teenager who is trying to interact with the world. We've both only seen 2 episodes, and I got to say, I'm immediately way more invested in this than I was in Sorry to Bother You. Sorry to Bother You had an interesting premise that seemed like it was going to be a one-note joke that then just all of a sudden threw all these other crazy ideas at you. And Boots Riley definitely has a really, really interesting view of the way that like we interact like with consumerism specifically, and I like his take on it. But my whole thing is I'm like, I needed it to be more consistent. And the whatever, the horse people that came out of nowhere and Sorry to Bother You, I can't say I was a fan of, but I already, just based off these 2 episodes that I saw, I'm already liking what he's doing with this. I like the idea of like, you know, his parents, you know, wanted to withhold him from the world because, you know, they don't want him to be exposed to the over sensationalism, and then him, of course, getting immediately sensationalized and the world reacting to him the way that he does, and him already getting like hit up as a model of like, I'm liking where the show is going for sure. I still got to see the rest of the 5 episodes in order to see where it goes, but I got to say, just based off what I've seen, I'm really impressed by it. So what are your thoughts on it? Because we haven't actually gotten a chance to talk a whole lot about this.
I don't feel that strongly about it. I think the style is really cool. It's cool to see that Boots Riley was given carte blanche to do an Amazon series, and he is pretty much just Spike Lee on mushrooms. And sometimes his style is a little indulgent, but I'm willing to give the rest of this another chance. I didn't have a strong reaction to the first two episodes, but I'm kind of interested to see where it goes, and I do like the performances for the most part. Jarrell Jerome is one of the better younger actors of his generation, and I like Mike Epps and Walton Goggins a lot.
Yes.
So.
Walton Goggins in particular, it's like, again, he's just that guy. Every time he shows up in something, he just makes it instantly better. Like, I already watched the first two episodes of The Righteous Gemstones. Episode 3 is on tonight. I already can't wait for Uncle Baby Billy to make his appearance as single-handedly possibly the best character on that entire show. Yeah. Righteous Gemstones, like, I don't know. Like, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, I kind of only care about everything that's going on with John Goodman. I don't really care about the three siblings because every time I love Danny McBride, but every time the three siblings show up, I'm like, it's just going to be more pointless bickering until the next thing. And Edie Patterson is cheating on her husband to no one's surprise. And Adam Devine is still irritating beyond belief. And we're not getting that much of Tony Cavallero, who has consistently been the best part about Adam Devine's arc throughout this entire time. I'm way more invested in John Goodman because I feel like John Goodman's arc, that's the only time where the show stops being a comedy and actually like get to the like more of the heartfelt, innate family stuff that the show wants to be about. And him and Skylar Gisondo had an incredible like car driving scene at the end of episode 2 that I thought was phenomenal. And of course I'm waiting for Walton Goggins to show up. I think the biggest crime that season 2 committed was not utilizing him as much, but they suffice with the other insert that they had, and especially with one Eric Andre and the amazing twist ending that came from the end of season 2. But yeah, I'm a Virgo. Like I said, this is only going to be like a quick discussion, but yeah, overall I gotta say, interesting first 2 episodes. I enjoyed it. Interested to see where the next 5 episodes go. Now, moving into it. I was texting you about this one. This was, I think, the big hit, new, splashy surprise show of last year that it had an interesting release strategy. Hulu opted to drop all these episodes rather than dropping them week to week. It was a risky decision considering that is usually an easy way to make shows disappear if they're not on Netflix. And that was not at all the case with The Bear season 1, which again was a very, very well done first season to me, but felt like it was lacking something to really make it hit. You know, like it had all the pieces to be like a great prestige show. It's got a really good and interesting cast. It's got a good enough premise. It was tackling a world and a type of storytelling that you really hadn't seen in prestige TV before. And the filmmaking itself was just so frenetic and creative and engaging, and just like the way that the filmmaking is done, it really makes you feel like you are in that kitchen with them, and you feel the stress and the mental strain that comes from that. But for me, I remember finishing the first season last year and being like, okay, that was really good, but I couldn't really connect to it. And I feel like everything that I was missing from that first season was found right here in the second season because, oh man, I don't know when it started to click. The first couple episodes they were starting to repeat some of the similar beats of season 1. I'm like, okay, we've done this before. You know, when is this going to start picking up? And then I think it was either when Carmi's, when Carmi's former fling, who then becomes his girlfriend, shows up. Mm-hmm. Also when Marcus went to Amsterdam. And then it really hit home with that middle episode with where they had all the family members with all the celebrity inserts. And I'm like, oh, this show just hit another level. And after I binged the whole thing in 2 days. I could not stop watching after a certain point. It was the first show that I binged. Dude, I love it. This is already a lock for me for show of the year, easily.
Yeah, I think it ended up being a more successful season. The first couple episodes of this season, I was just like, okay, all right, I don't know. I'm not sure. Because that first season for me, the first half of that first season was pretty fire. And I do think like when that dip in the middle, when those 2 episodes where Christopher Storer doesn't direct, it's very like you could tell. Yeah, because he's a very and I feel like there's a similar problem with episode 3 and 5 in this season. But episode 4 was actually a good one with Rami Youssef.
Yeah, with Rami Youssef directing the episode.
Christopher Storer is becoming like one of the better, like more distinct directors on television right now, because he has like a very visceral style, like you were saying. You feel like you're in the kitchen and getting yelled at, and like while some of the improv techniques on this show get a little irritating, there's just a couple undeniable performances on here that you really just have to sing the praises of, like Jeremy Allen White and especially Eben Moss-Bachrach, who
Oh
really
my
has
God.
he has one of the best episodes of the series so far.
Easily. That Forks episode is that's episode of the year material for me. That episode.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about how the finale ends per se. It just ends a little
a couple of unresolved
melodramatic
things that are trying to be melodramatic,
and there's like one like over dramatic like thing involving like a refrigerator and someone's right next to the door, and then you realize it's them, and it's like really just
it was dumb, and I'm like, that's how that's gotta end, really.
It was kind of like a bummer, but other than that, I agree. It's a stronger season overall in terms of the character writing. But it's great. It's
because like I feel like one of my biggest criticisms of the first season was that like I felt like all the other people in the back of the restaurant just didn't get enough development, and there were certain points where I was just questioning like, why is he keeping all these people, and I just felt like there were certain bits of information that I needed to know about the characters from that first season that definitely got answered, very specifically addressed and answered this season, which I was a big fan of, like Tina, Ibra, Mark, a lot of like again the restaurant staff. What's his name? The Fat getting a lot more character development. Richie really improved him. Like that family. Oh my God! Can we just talk about that episode 6 for a minute? And the Seven Fishes, where you get that. It's another flashback episode where we get an entire hour devoted to it. John Bernthal is cast as Carmi's Jeremy Allen White's older brother, which it's just unbelievable. John Bernthal really has become that actor where he only shows up for about 3 seconds of screen time. I'm being facetious, obviously, and everything that he's in, but he's always the best part about it. Like he
might be the best actor in terms of like portraying anger.
I think
he might be the best.
I think so. And the thing is that like obviously everybody lives making jokes like, oh, all he does is yell. It's like you need to watch something like that, which has never been true. But like to watch something like this where he just has so much pain in those eyes underneath it, like when he is throwing the forks at Bob Odenkirk, which we just got to go over this cast that they've assembled for this. You got Jamie Lee Curtis as their mom. You got Bob Odenkirk as their uncle. You got what's it called? You got Jillian Jacobs as Eben Moss-Bachrach's baby mama. You got Sarah Paulson and John Mulaney as the two cousins. I'm like, what? It was just like a revolving smorgasbord of how many actors they could get. And for the most part, they were all great. I was almost like,
Mulaney was phenomenal.
And that Mulaney with that one monologue that he gives at the end about why the Seven Fishes is like important to him was unbelievable. But I saw you grimace a little bit with Jamie Lee Curtis there. So
yeah, she's way too over the top in this. Way too over the top. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with her. And with this and the Halloween movies
and everything ever all at once.
Yeah, she's really turning into kind of a bad actress to me. I mean, people are saying she deserves an Emmy for this, but I thought she was like, it's miscast.
I was a big fan of her performance, but I understand where you're coming from in terms of like, yeah, she's definitely overplaying it, and she's playing into a very, very specific type that it is already very difficult.
Bipolar.
Right. And like, again, it's like the whole thing of like, again, the show sort of scratching the surface of like the problems that come with mental illness that is not addressed and how that builds up generationally over time. And then attempting to hit that all in that one very, very claustrophobic episode. I swear, this show does claustrophobia unlike anybody else. It is pitch perfect how it handles it. But that's the one, especially with like how she shows up outside the restaurant but can't go in for reasons that
it has to be the fucking goofy
and it has to be the goofy
husband.
Right.
From Love. That guy's great. That guy's really great.
Really fantastic. That guy deserves an Emmy nomination.
He's terrific. Sure. Yeah, he's terrific, that guy.
Yeah,
he was great in the first season too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, big fan of the show now. Can't wait to see if and when they bring it back for season 3. I hope they do. I can't believe I have to say that now because
they probably will.
They probably will. It's been a big hit for FX. Yeah. FX still delivered, just being solid overall. They got What We Do in the Shadows and Reservation Dogs, and I think they have Shogun, and hopefully Fargo season 5 still comes out this year. It doesn't get delayed because of the writer's strike. But yeah, all right. So Dustin, now that we've glossed over all this content, shall we break down our top 10 favorite movies of 2023 so far? I gotta say, it's been a relatively disappointing year. But the good news is that we were able to see some Tribeca movies. I unfortunately missed one because my online screening expired, but we both saw some good movies. And so this list will largely be attributed to Tribeca movies. So Dustin, I'm thinking that rather than how we normally do it for our Actors Hall of Fame, let's just run through our 10 through 6 each. Just run through it quick, shout out some, and then go through 5 through 2, and then we'll talk about our number ones.
Okay. number 10 for me is Ben Affleck's Air. Number 9 is a movie I saw on digital Tribeca last year, but it got a release this year, and that's God's Time. This directorial debut by Daniel Antebbe. It's kind of like a Safdie brothers kind of esque movie. It's very good. It's like COVID set. Number 8 is Randall Park's directorial debut that I caught at Virtual Sundance, Shortcomings, which is very good. It has a phenomenal lead performance from Justin H. Min. Number 7 is Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, Creed 3, which features phenomenal, fighting scenes and a great villainous turn from Jonathan Majors, who is canceled forever. But he turned in one of the best performances of the year also in Magazine Dreams, another movie I caught at Sundance. And number 6 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Fantastic animation, great cast. Really thrilling. It's very cinematic. I love that it harkens back to the style of Batman Mask of the Phantasm a little bit. It just has that, tonal feel. And even though I liked Into the Spider-Verse more, I definitely enjoyed this. And I think Beyond the Spider-Verse has potential to top both of them.
Yes, indeed. If it actually makes its March release date, which I do not know if it will. So I'm just doing some slight rearranging of my list as I'm examining it. All right, so now my top 10 list, my 10 through 6. My number 10 is M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin, a movie that I had very low expectations for after his last couple of efforts, Glass and Old being kind of disappointing. But Knock at the Cabin, I think, expresses everything that makes M. Night a great filmmaker. I thought it was very existential. I thought the acting was terrific around the board. I was locked in and engaged from minute 1 to however long this movie was. And I thought this movie actually had some very poignant and very interestingly, sweet and emotionally heartfelt moments, even moments that you think would be played for comedy in a typical M. Night movie. I have to say I enjoyed overall. And just the fact that I feel like it's kind of being overlooked by a lot of people. I definitely think that this deserves a little bit more love, a little bit more of a shout out. My number 9 is Pixar's Elemental, a movie that a lot of people have been saying is mediocre Pixar, is not the Pixar of old. I could not disagree more. This to me is everything that I enjoy about Pixar of old. It's got the stylistics, it's got the deeper message, even if the message is maybe a little bit more modern, but it's not as obnoxious and in your face as Turning Red was last year. I particularly enjoyed the voiceover, and I liked the kind of the portrayal of the immigrant struggle. I found that to be really enjoyable and heartfelt, and the buildup of the romance and the goofy comedy. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. My number 8 is Past Lives, the A24 film by Celine Song. I thought this movie was probably one of the best examinations of how relationships change over time that I've ever seen. I was expecting to get bored by this movie at some point, and I was expecting that the romance to get overly melodramatic, but I think just because of I've always been interested in the idea of change over time and seeing that portrayed on the in the cinematic lens. That's always been one of the more interesting things that I think cinema has been capable of, and I think this movie did it absolutely well. Number 7 is one of a couple films that I saw at Tribeca, that being Randall Park's directorial debut, Shortcomings. This movie was just absolutely spectacular. I think this is one of the best demonstrations of just making unlikable people as approachable and fun to watch as humanly possible, where there was absolutely almost nothing redeemable about Justin H. Min's character, and yet Randall Park is somehow able to find the humanity in his character. And my number 6 is Apple TV Plus's so far really only great movie of the year, that being Tetris, which is a movie that you have been telling me about for years, that I finally watched and just had. It's an absolute blast. It's The Social Network meets a Cold War spy thriller, and it's just an absolute joy to watch from start to finish. Taron Egerton kills it in the lead role, and yeah, it's Tetris. If you like Tetris and you like Cold War thrillers, it's a merging of genres that shouldn't work, but works way better than you would think it does. So yeah, that's my 10 through 6.
All right, so then you want me to do my 5 through 2?
5 through 2, yes.
All right, my number 5 is another debut. It's based off a nonfiction book, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, directed by Daniel Goldhaber. It has a relatively unknown cast. It has a couple familiar faces in it. It has Sasha Lane from American Honey, Lucas Gage from Euphoria, Forrest Goodluck from The Revenant, and Marcus Scribner from Blackish, and Jake Weary from one of my favorite shows, Animal Kingdom. It's a very taut 70s-esque thriller. It's very well paced. It has one of the best musical scores of the year that harkens back to Tangerine Dream. yeah, I really enjoyed this a lot, and it has a good message to it, and it's has really good tension and very good performances all the way through. Number 4 is Tetris, directed by John S. Baird, who also directed Filth, a movie that's also very underrated that starred James McAvoy in one of his best performances. This starred Taron Egerton as the guy that discovers Tetris, one of my favorite things in the world. It's my favorite game. I play it a lot. It's the only thing I play, really. And I really thought this has the best musical score this year by Lorne Balfe, one of my favorite, most consistent composers that we have working today. And it has a really solid supporting cast like Toby Jones and Roger Allam from Speed Racer. But Taron Egerton really carries the fuck out of this movie. And it's very entertaining. It's funny. It's very well edited. It's co-edited by the guy that did Hackers. It's The Social Network meets Hackers, as far as I'm concerned. Number 3, controversial. Andy Muschietti's The Flash. Sorry, people.
That is controversial.
Sorry,
yes,
people.
Yes,
I'm sorry I had fun. I'm sorry I actually had a lot of fun. I was looking forward to this movie forever. And Ezra Miller kicked the fucking shit out of this performance. They are fucking phenomenal in this. They get every comic beat down. It's just perfect work from them. Great ensemble, but they carry the hell out of this movie. And I know the effects aren't the greatest in the world in the third act, but I think in the first half in particular, there's plenty of effects to admire in this movie. And you guys act like there's no effects to make fun of in Marvel movies. It's like you guys forgot about how shitty the effects were in Quantumania 2 months ago. Shut up and enjoy The Flash. You got your Michael Keaton back. Sasha Calle is hot as fuck. Fucking enjoy this movie. It's funny and enjoyable and cool. We're never seeing Ezra Miller again, especially with that ending.
Nope.
We're definitely not, but it was fun while it lasted. Sorry. Number 3. My number 2 is Blackberry, directed by Matt Johnson, a director who I'm not a big fan of him. He's a talented guy, but he's a little too abrasive because he's a writer, actor, director, and he's very self-aware always when it comes to being a movie lover and everything. And I know we are, but he takes it to another level sometimes, especially writing himself. Not writing himself, but he plays like a character in this movie. It's about the creation of BlackBerry and how it's sort of discovered by this businessman played by Glenn Howerton, and he kind of weasels his way into becoming the co-founder of BlackBerry with Jay Baruchel, who plays Mike Lazaridis, the inventor of the device. And Matt Johnson plays his right-hand man. It's loosely based off the true story, but it feels so genuine and real and raw, the way it's shot, the way it's scored, the way it's performed. This movie's very funny, but it isn't a comedy. It has really funny moments. That's why it's very reminiscent of The Social Network and has an ending that kind of rips it off, but it's fucking well done. And it has a little bit of a pacing issue. It's another movie that could have been at least 10, 15 minutes longer to really get the full scope of what it was trying to say. But other than that, it's tight as hell, and it has a great ensemble cast. Matt Johnson turns in his best performance for sure, being a very well-earned comic relief and heart of this film. And Glenn Howerton is scary as fuck and phenomenal, gives his best film performance. And I'm a huge fan of him on It's Always Sunny, which is still alive and thriving and doing great. And it's arguably one of the better seasons in a minute that's currently on. And Jay Baruchel, who I've always felt he's been too ridiculed in the past. I always thought he was a very relatable, empathetic actor. And he's also been like a great underrated talent in terms of comedy. And he turns in his most well-rounded dramatic performance ever. So, yeah, I highly recommend Blackberry if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, Blackberry and How to Blow Up a Pipeline, both movies that I have not gotten a chance to watch yet, but are on my list for sure. So now my 5 through 4. On my number 5, probably my most so you got your flashback, and here's my most controversial choice. Probably because I'm possibly the only person to see this movie that's like this. My number 5 is Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid, the movie that finally helped me understand who Ari Aster is as a person and Ari Aster is as a filmmaker. I felt like Hereditary and Midsommar were my 2 biggest problems with those movies, is they were too restrictive. I think they kind of put Ari Aster in a box and didn't fully help us get to know who he really was as a person. And this movie is absolutely everything that I could have possibly wanted from him. This movie is an absolute farce. It's completely making fun of the fact of people's anxiety, and specifically, people who are ham-stricken by their issues with their mothers. And this is just him fully unhinged. Does this movie necessarily have a point? No. Does it actually understand like what makes a comedy? Not at all. But it is just an absolute joyride from start to finish, and just the ridiculous over the top moments of this movie. Oh man, this movie goes over the top like no other movie you will ever see. This movie includes such scenes as a gigantic, a penis-shaped object getting stabbed. You have Parker Posey getting literally frozen mid-sex, which is one of the best payoffs to a joke that I've ever seen. You have a crazy over-the-top stereotype of an over-the-top teenage caricature drinking paint as a means of committing suicide. This movie is absolutely bonkers. You have Joaquin Phoenix giving probably the most Phoenixiest performance ever, where he is completely like nervous and scared of like for no reason, and you almost don't get why, like because the way that Ari Aster because the way that Ari Aster films this world is just so good. You're like, nothing that's happening here is real. Nothing is ridiculous. Nothing makes sense. But when you understand that it's coming from the very specific way in which someone views the world and it is trying to make light of that, that I think is kind of what a lot of people missed about this movie. Again, it's not for everyone. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I went into this movie fully expected to hate it, and I had an absolute blast with it. One of the more fun times that I had with a movie in theaters this year. My number 4 is another Tribeca screening that I call Leroy, which is got to be this year's.
Tell me about this, because I'm very much looking forward to it.
This movie is just an absolute blast. It's like Fargo meets The Killing, Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, with a little bit of Pulp Fiction splashed in there, where it is just a bonkers downtown crime comedy. With a splash of it's a mad world in there, where it's a case of mistaken identity in which a briefcase of money is misplaced and given to the wrong person, which then leads to a cacophony of events going off, where you have John Magaro, who plays an emasculated person, getting mistaken for a hired contract killer played by Dylan Baker, who then attempts to enact this ridiculous murder plot as a means of proving that he is a man. And that unfortunately leads to a whole chaotic series of events that involves his brother, who is sleeping with his wife, also draws in Steve Zahn, who is attempting to make his way as a private detective. It also features a terrifying performance by Dylan Baker with easily one of the most compelling opening scenes of any movie that I've seen in a while. I don't want to give away too much because this is one of those movies that like I don't know how much traction it's going to get post Tribeca, but like it's definitely one of the more enjoyable experiences that I had so far this year. I was laughing, I was scared shitless, I was feeling bad for these characters. It's everything that I want. Like this year truly is the comeback for like the great crime story. And you've got certain other like interesting ones coming out this year, like Drive Away Dolls, Ethan Cohen's first movie that he's doing by himself, I think looks pretty promising. So yeah, Leroy for sure. Definitely up there. Number 3 and 2 are generic picks, but I don't care because they're 2 of my favorite movies of the year. They're 2 of the best times that I had in the theater this year. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's everything that I wanted from it. It's everything that James Gunn said it was going to be. It's a beautiful emotional send-off to these characters. Is it the most tight and concise? No. There's a lot of extra stuff. There's a lot of extra fluff that's thrown in there. But as far as being James Gunn's send-off to his time in Marvel, being James Gunn's send-off to these characters, and just another kick-ass soundtrack, another kick-ass, wild, fun ride that kind of reminds me of the days of the MCU of old. This is everything that I wanted, which leads into my number 2, which is kind of, again, if Guardians of the Galaxy is where superhero movies were 10 years ago, then Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is where superhero movies are now. A lot of people, I think, were slightly turned off. And again, I use that word very, very sparsely because this movie is almost universally being praised as the best movie of the year. I think it's like still crushing it at the box office like almost a month after its release. And the thing about it is that this movie it's held back by the fact that it's a part 1 of 2. And that causes a lot of the plot lines that they introduce to kind of feel unresolved because this movie introduces a lot of stuff. It is the longest American animated movie ever produced. The amount of textures and styles that are thrown into this movie is artistically looking one of the most beautiful movies in a while, while still maintaining a lot of that like great underlying tone about Spider-Man that it is that we love so much. But I think it's held back by the fact that because it is a part 1, and there are a lot of storylines that are introduced and then left purposely on a cliffhanger. For me, it works well, but I know that may be a detractor for certain other people, especially because there are kind of a lot of plot holes that pop up in this movie as a result of the multiverse stuff and as a result of the cliffhanger. Like I was going over in my head certain of the problems surrounding the Miguel O'Hara, the Spider-Man 2099 character, and certain flaws that kind of make that character a little bit more problematic than it may seem. And of course, the whole overreaction to me of Gwen Stacy might be trans because of an obscure poster, and the fact that her relationship with her dad is supposed to be an allegory for her being trans. I'm like, why don't you just let it be that it's because she's Spider-Man and because she's carrying a lot of, or Spider-Woman or whatever, Spider-Gwen, whatever. And like, you have to deal with like she has to deal with the guilt of losing her best friend. Why does everything, and yes, I'm going to sound like a bigot and I don't care. It's like, why does everything have to be that way? And I'll tell you, I'll explain where the problem for me comes from for that. It's the fact that because when people slap that label on it, it immediately takes away from the artistic intent, the relatable, the human aspect that we can all universally relate to, rather than just slapping a label on it. I don't care if I just sounded anti-trans. Throw me in with J.K. Rowling. I don't care. I don't hate trans people, but that is why I love Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's just on an animation level, this movie is doing things that I didn't even know were possible to do on an animation medium. So yeah, moving into our number ones, respective favorite movies of the year.
All right, my number one is a directorial debut. I saw it at Virtual Sundance, Dominic. It's still my favorite movie since January. It's Theater Camp.
Yes.
Very, very good. It's like a mockumentary throwback film to like the Christopher Guest movies. And it's about this theater camp that's in upstate New York, not Poughkeepsie. I don't know where, but it's really fucking funny and really charming, and really one of the movies that I wanted to watch immediately after I saw it again, and it's really good. It's directed by co-directed by Molly Gordon, who's an actress who we just talked about on The Bear, and she turns in her best work in front of and behind the camera here. Her and Ben Platt play this duo at a theater camp that they work together, and they work on everything. They work on a play and everything. And Ben Platt, I know he gets a lot of shit for Dear Evan Hansen, but he turns in his funniest and best performance yet. And it's about time, because I never really liked him, especially in Pitch Perfect, where he played that dumb singing magician. But bad movie, Pitch Perfect. You people were all wrong about that movie. Bad movie. Ben Platt's very good in it. Jimmy Tatro obviously is just hilarious. Like, he's really becoming like reliable. Funny? Yeah, he's really become reliable as fuck ever since American Vandal. Like, he's fucking hilarious.
Oh, see, I would go even further. Even though he had a tiny part, like that bit part that he had with his intro in 22 Jump Street was hilarious.
22 Jump Street was good. Yeah,
great. Great. I'm
good,
sorry. I still like it more than 21 Jump Street, but that's just me. What's it called? Theater Camp that comes out in a couple weeks. I'm seeing that.
I wasn't done. And Noah Galvin is fucking hilarious. This is his best performance for sure. Okay. Definitely, like, he's hilarious. Already iconic in this, and like, I don't want to give away a bunch of the quotes, but it's just has a great heart. It's consistently funny, and it's close to a 9. That's right. I haven't given a 9 out of 10 this year. But it's very good. This and Blackberry are the two standout best films of the year for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Blackberry, and I'm really excited to see this when it comes out the same weekend that Mission Impossible comes out. My number one of the year is a movie that nobody has heard of. I'll be surprised if anybody hears of this. This is one of the virtual my only virtual screening for Tribeca this year. And I will say that while this movie is not a perfect movie, this movie is probably not going to be on a lot of people's lists. I will be surprised if it makes anybody's list.
Well, if it comes out,
this movie for me is number one because it just had such a visceral reaction for me personally. Like, me personally, seeing what happened in this movie, this kind of weirdly coincided with an event that happened like almost like a week prior to me watching this, that like, and just watching this movie, I was just transfixed, and no other movie had an effect on me like this movie did. And I'll be interested to see if any other movie that comes out this year has an effect on me, just given how few movies come out that have this kind of effect on me. And that's a movie called The Line, written and directed by Ethan Berger, that details the events that happen for a fictionalized fraternity at a big name college, and all of the, it's basically detailed like all of the toxic habits that happen in fraternities of this size that are protected by alumni that have this kind of money, and a certain disastrous event that happens near the end. I think the tension building with this movie is so pitch perfect. I think the acting is so stellar from everybody involved, from Alex Wolff, from Lewis Pullman, from Bo Mitchell, all of whom I have personally nominated, as well as our Euphoria alumni, Angus Cloud, who strangely looks younger in this movie than he does in Euphoria. I don't know if that's like a makeup thing or what.
They shaved him, I think.
Yeah, but this movie was just so visceral. It was scary how viscerally this so. Little bit from that. I did join a fraternity in college, not a national, not to this level, not even close. And the thing that I will say is that I heard some horror stories about certain things that national fraternities did to their pledges, the who they would get to join them. And this movie just putting that on front display for the whole world to see and just owning up to it, not backing down from it at all. It was like this movie, like to say that this is a horror movie, I don't think does this movie enough justice, because in terms of just how accurately it depicts like that type of that essentially this cult-like mentality that fraternities of that level foster and develop is absolutely insane and accurate, like to a T. So for me, and not to mention, this is probably the best performance that I may have ever seen from Alex Wolff. Like Alex Wolff is somebody who's really been evolving as a performer since his Naked Brothers days, but this is really what solidifies me for him. I know you're more of a Nat Wolff guy, and I definitely understand why, but for me, I'm telling you, I think this might give the slight edge to Alex for me personally. Like it'll probably go right back to Nat once I see him in another thing, but like, oh man, this movie was just next level for me, and I heavily recommend it.
I want to talk
anybody
about
who's able to watch it. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. To me, I feel like this movie doesn't do the whole hazing thing as well as another movie did, like Goat, that came out a few years ago, that co-starred Nick Jonas, and it starred Ben Schnetzer and James Franco and Jake Picking, and yeah, it's definitely not as visceral as that movie. To me, it's more of a character study, this movie, and Alex Wolff definitely disappears into this performance.
Yes.
He has a completely different voice, and I was very impressed by it. I just feel like the movie itself kind of underserves him and his cast because of how typical some of the hazing stuff was, because the movie wasn't really about hazing. It really becomes about hazing in like the last 20-25 minutes, if that. So yeah, it's really like a build up to like that one incident, and the Halle Bailey character just gets lost in the shuffle. She doesn't really play that big of a part. I thought it was kind of silly that she had to be there only for him to realize, like, oh yeah, the fraternity I am is kind of bad. But like, I don't think she needed to be there for him to realize that. You know what I mean? I feel like the movie could have done that without her character. But yeah, Bo Mitchell was kind of underserved. He was fantastic. Austin Abrams was terrific in this and really shines.
Another Euphoria alumni.
Yeah, he's always been terrific, that kid. And yeah, Angus Cloud is well used. I would have liked to see a little bit more of Lewis Pullman, who's impressed me every time I've seen him. One of my favorite parts of Top Gun Maverick. And yeah, I just don't. I wish I loved this movie, because the first like 40 minutes, I was like, I'm really interested in digging this movie. It has some really good, songs in it. It has the blues song. It drops the blue, I'm blue, like 40 times, which is funny. But it has one of my favorite Project Pat songs ever too, in the background of one scene. But like, yeah, I just feel like this needed to be a little crazier, and it wasn't really about hazing like the synopsis.
Well, just in terms of
it's about like the guy. It's about the character that Alex Wolff plays.
And I guess that's kind of where I got more locked into it, because you're right. It's not about hazing. It's more so about like the type of mentality that goes into hazing, and like how they split up each of the characters, like specifically how they build up the animosity between the Bo Mitchell and the Austin Abrams characters, and how that comes to a head in that crazy hazing incident. So you're right. It's not a movie about hazing, but in terms of showing like the thought process
about toxic masculinity,
right? To me is where I really related to it. Yeah,
like yeah, it's obviously like you're gonna get a bunch of good young actors together to be toxic and shit. Like, it's gonna be entertaining and everything. I just don't think there's that much like depth to it, other than like, oh yeah, it's kind of fucked up that Austin Abrams is saying that to Bo Mitchell and vice versa. Like, I just don't really. I feel like the movie could have delved way deeper into that, and I felt like it focused a little too much on Alex Wolff's character.
I agree.
And what he was going through. It should have been more of a true ensemble, especially with that.
See, that I'll give you. Yes,
I feel like the synopsis was definitely underserving what the movie was actually about. You know, and I felt like that was kind of cheating. But like, I still had a good time with it, and I do think this director has promise. I just wish I was in love with it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I get that. Absolutely. So with that being said, like I said, it is very late. I am tired. I want to go to bed, but this has been great, Dustin. Thank you again for coming on. And again, just being an absolute trooper, slugging through all this content. We'll be back next weekend for a return to the summer series. We got Indiana Jones next weekend. Yay. Before Dustin and I make our grand reappearance in the month of July to cover our next
Last Crusade. I got to watch Last Crusade, man. I never saw it.
You've never seen Last Crusade? Oh my God.
No, I've seen the first scene like 20 times.
That's the one that comes the closest to Raiders for me. There are a lot of people who have that as their favorite Indiana. It's phenomenal. I watched that that movie, and I'm like, I loved it. Raiders is still the best, but I think Last Crusade is my favorite. Yes,
Raiders
definitely.
is awesome. That's
Raiders
gonna be hard to beat.
Right, yeah, Raiders. There's a universe. Again, like Spielberg, man, he knows what he is doing. Yeah, watch Last Crusade. You're gonna love it.
Well, yeah, that first scene is dope, though.
It is insane with young River Phoenix.
Yeah,
absolutely. What a talent we were robbed of there. So, Dustin, once again, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
YouTube.com/Mr. G Movie Reviews. You can follow me on Letterboxd, Dustin Mason. You can follow me on Twitter, Duster.
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course. And follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. Be sure to follow the official Talking TV podcast across all platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. This episode will be available in a couple hours to listen to on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And as always, people, remember, 12 seasons in a short film. And watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.